In any life, we have highs and lows, light and dark, wins and losses. What happens when we encounter that moment in time when what happens next could change everything? Join us as we step into another person's inspirational moment and see how we can connect their experience to ours. This is Greg Stevens, and you're listening to A Shot of Inspiration. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Shot of Inspiration. I'm your host, Greg Stevens. I'm excited to be here today with Kris Miller. Now, I met Kris, it's been several months ago. She has a podcast called Money 911. I talked to Kris and I just found her to be very vibrant, very relationally connected. And also, she helps people in finances. And it's interesting because I grew up very poor. When I finally hit a certain level, I just wanted it where I didn't have to look at money anymore. I wanted to get at that place where I didn't have to worry about every other paycheck because I had to worry about everything to the penny. And I've also gotten a little lax in that area. It's interesting. My wife is so good with money. I love that she's good with money because she can actually help me out. But Kris, I want to say thank you for being on the show. We're happy to have you here. And if you would tell our audience a little bit about you, what you do, how you got started, and just kind of walk us through how you walked me through your life when we first started talking.
All right, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to share a little bit of the story. I got started in 1991, 92, 30, 32, 33 years ago, 3 decades. It's evolved. But as I started as a paralegal and I was working with an attorney and we were at a senior center and we were working on a living trust and there was a widow there and all she had was a car and a house and she didn't have any money. Now this guy, he wanted to charge her $5,000 for a living she needed it. She had a house, right? She had an asset put in a trust, but she didn't have the money. So when she left the room, I just looked at him and it seemed like the normal thing to do. And I just said, "Hey, can you give her a deal?" And he looked at me like I was from another planet. It was very cold and creepy. And that was it. It was like, "Okay, goodbye."
Right.
And that's what inspired me. You know what? I'm going to make it easy for the average person to get a living trust. So when I did it, I was one of the first in Southern California. Now, this was like a gray area because I'm not an attorney. I don't give legal advice, but I was a paralegal and I do all the work that attorneys do, but not talk in court unless I sue them, which I've done a few times and I won a few times. And they filed bankruptcy a few
Few
times and didn't
times.
pay me.
It's good. I know how that works. Yeah.
But I'm what do they say? I'm digressing there. Anyway, I started doing these workshops on what's the difference between a will and a living trust. Now, living trusts aren't just the end of the life document, but they're paperwork that protect your assets and they have health care and powers of attorney, things we need, guardianships for minor children, things that like when you're young, you just don't think you'll ever die, or mom and dad go out to dinner and don't come back. Who's going to take care of their kids? We don't think like that anyway. So I started doing the workshops on a living trust, Greg, and it just blew up because what I did was I broke the market and I started giving these 5,000 living trusts for $199
Wow.
and it blew up. So I maybe did 5 to 8 a week. People
Wow.
were just coming in by and what was happening during this time was a transition in California, where paralegals had to be under an attorney, and there was a lot of independent paralegals going, "Hey, we don't need we do all the work. We don't need to do all this, a restriction that really wasn't needed for document preparation, simple
Right.
little things." They ended up creating there were so many independent paralegals that were leaving that dominion that the state bar created a designation, mostly so they could get more money and fees and bonds, called an LDA. So I'm one of the first LDAs in California, legal document assistant, which means I have a practice. I don't have to be underneath an attorney. I have a document preparation service. And we've created over 6,000 living trusts. I stopped counting in the last 33 years.
Wow.
And
That's
so pretty
amazing.
proud of it.
Yeah.
That's how it
Well,
got started.
let me ask you, what's been some of the best stories that have inspired you around helping people with living trust? Because like you said, the one lady didn't have any money and she needed it. And I'm sure just that whole piece that inspired you, I bet there's a lot of great stories behind that. So could you share a couple?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
sure could. I could write a book on just the stories of the people because when I did it, Greg, I didn't have an idea. Really, I didn't know where I was going with it. But what
Wow.
happened, just because of the repetition and thousands of people coming in my office, I started noticing a pattern, which was they were all coming in to start their retirement plan at 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90.
Wow.
Seriously, I mean it. Like, what is going on here? You go to school and you learn how to make money. You get out of school, and what do? You give it to somebody to gamble, really, because it's like a roulette wheel. And everyone knows that right now. Is it going to be up or down when you retire? And that's what the system is set up to break people. This is a hard story to share, Greg, but what
Yeah.
I found is a lot of people end up losing their money before they pass away in a nursing home, like we just went through with the pandemic, or probate, conservatorship, not having the right paperwork, or the Great Recession. So that's when I learned how to crash proof my finances. And there's some wild stories that you just don't think about, like when you're 40 or 30, what's it like when you're 60? When you're 60, what's it like when you're 80? And each one has a different odd little thing about it that once you've been through a few decades, each age has a special thing they should be doing.
All right.
First one for everyone now is be safe and plan. Don't wait. And there was one client that he was getting dementia, and it's a rough story. It's not, some of these stories are not the happy, but this guy, he could drive, but he had dementia. He just cleared out his bank account, which was, I guess, enough gas to get to Nevada, and he ended up just driving into the desert, and they found him, like, months later. He was living on some abandoned farm and, drinking the water from the troughs, and this is a hard story. This is what happens if you don't have a plan. You have someone that's taking care of you and helping you. It's so important. Luckily, they found him, but this is a very common thing that when some good percentage of people get dementia, they don't have that kind of catastrophic powers of attorney or catastrophic illness protection to take care of them. And they're
Right.
just like wild horses on their own. And it's crazy what happens.
Yeah, I've heard the statistics that the number one cause of bankruptcy is because of medical bills. And
Yeah, you
it's
don't
ridiculous that we live in a country where we pay such high premiums
that's
that
right.
people lose all of their assets. That's wrong.
And
And there's got to be a better fix. I just
well,
think that we have really smart people in the country that we could figure this out if we really tried.
the big money isn't there, and the big money is in the way the system is set up, but you have to learn how to manage through it and be your own boss, be your own planner, because no one savior is gonna come and tell you, "No, you need to do this, you need to do that." The government's not gonna tell you that. And
No.
Medicare won't cover you in a nursing home. A lot of people think, "My Social Security will cover me." No. And 7 out of 10 of us over 65 need a nursing home. That's before the pandemic.
Wow.
And most of us, like 2%, I think, of everybody in the country even have long-term care insurance. And Medicare or Medicaid, when you get broke, won't cover you in your home. You have to be totally broke before they even help you.
Uh,
So there's all these regulations that you have to go to school to learn about. So the average person is just a victim, right? A victim of the circumstances. And honestly, another sad story. This is hard. It's a hard business. Death and taxes. That's why I call it healthy money, happy life, to make it fun because there are empowering ways to get through it. But my family was like a nightmare. My mommy had cancer and they said she's got a year to live. And, she beat that, lots of prayers and her will to live. And she went another 10 years. Thank God my daddy was very successful. He was a genius. He went to Caltech and one of his teachers was Einstein. And he ran the wind tunnels during the war. He was a very brilliant man and did well, had multi-million, would not buy long-term care insurance. He was like, before the boomers, right? Medicare is going to cover it. I'm not going to a nursing home. I'll just walk out in the desert. Like, sure, Dad, you're going to walk out. So give me a break. So when my mom got cancer, then you know how you get cancer? You get cancer free. When she was cancer free, it was like, Mom, you want to get this protection so you can have care in your own home? She was like, Yeah, honey, let's do it. Dad was like, No, we don't need that. So they didn't. She ended up needing care. Guess how much? Just this is just going to shock you. And this is 2010. Okay.
Okay.
Her care was $15,000 a month. 5 days of chemo was $90,000. So she had $90,000 a month for chemo for a year. $1,000,000 is not a lot of money, even if you're co-paying 20% of all this stuff in the Medicare. And the Medicare is so tricky. There's so much payment. I always thought it was going to be free, but you end up paying for a lot of it once you get there.
Yeah.
And then you younger guys wait till you get there, if it's even there.
And like you said, even on Medicare, the paperwork alone is my mom is 83 and she's doing some things right now. And that's where most of her days are spent either at the doctor or trying to fill out forms to try to get reimbursement or get the payment to the doctor and or the what procedures she can pass and the time she spends, it's interesting because I've gotten to work with a lot of different groups, and it it's a system that, as we know, we can do better. I just think we can do better.
Absolutely. The whole money system is set up to break people.
Yeah.
They end up, like I said, losing it before they go in the nursing homes. And everybody has about 95% of their money in the stock market. Hello, you guys, really right now, pay attention. This thing is going down, and I'm an optimist. So, what I show people is about safe money. I've never lost one dime in any market risk. So, I don't do gambling in the stock market. I do the
Right.
safe money thing. And I started with seniors. So, people that are older can do what's called equity index annuities. And they've been around since the Middle Ages, and honestly, I did mine 30 years ago because I saw the time, not that I'm so brilliant, I just studied a lot and saw the time that we're at right now. I don't wanna lose my money, I've worked hard for it.
Yeah.
So I literally have doubled and tripled the money that I put in there, and they have income that they pay you for life. They even have tax-free income in the investable life insurance. There's a lot of really cool, safe products, but guess what? They're not talked about a lot. But why? Because of big money, and
Right.
they own the media.
All right.
And so they like that system pays out a lot more. So you gotta learn how to manage through the system that's there till it's born again, right?
Yeah. And that's what you help people with, correct?
That's exactly I've helped over 6,000 people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the good feeling.
Yeah.
That's my money.
Yeah. Love that.
They become my friends and my family. I have
Yeah.
clients that call me, you know, I talked to 20 years later and I'm talking to their grandkids now. And
Right.
they're so grateful. And I check in with them every year. If they do a healthy money product, I always check with them. And it honestly, Greg, you call a little widow, and I know how it is. I'm a widow. You
Right.
have someone to call you and say, How you doing? And now you gotta, your money's safe. Aren't you glad you have it safe? And
Right.
it's really fabulous. That is so fulfilling
Yeah.
to my heart. And that's really my money is all the heart connection.
That's great. I love that. So, Chris, I'm just going to ask you because we're going to post this as well. How can people get a hold of you? Then, once you share with people that, if you could give our listeners one thing that maybe they could look into, just what you think would be something financially for them to consider, maybe at different ages, walk us through the generations, how they might want to
Okay.
look at something. How would people get a hold of you?
Okay. You can hop on my calendar with Meet with Kris Miller, Kris Miller, Meet, MET, right? With chrismiller.com. That gets you on my calendar. You can email me at Kris, Kris, at Healthy Money Happy Life. You can also call our office 951 926 4158. And we could set up what I call financial fitness strategy session because everybody's different. Everybody's got a different age, health, wealth, what they're trying to accomplish. And I will literally hop on the phone with you 20 minutes, half an hour, and I will see if I can help you. There's no charge for that. I also, and I'll get to share this with you later, Greg, I have a course coming out. I'm really excited about it. I've been working on it for a number of years. The man that's helping me with it does the Academy Awards. It's like an experience. It isn't just like a boring training class, but it's called Create Income You'll Never Outlive. We're getting ready to launch that.
I love
And that's pretty exciting. I also have videos that I can share with you from my workshops. Now, you asked me about the different things for different ages. If I was telling you guys that were 30, 40, 50, 60, even, I would tell you about what I learned at 58, and I was so mad. Still mad a little bit, which is called the Index Universal Life. It's investable life insurance. So you have to have a health for it. Now, it doesn't mean that if you had maybe had cancer 5 years ago, doesn't mean you're disqualified. You'd be amazed how they underwrite these things, but it is underwritten, and that lowers the cost of insurance. So it's life insurance. You're using a chassis of life insurance, which is tax free. And then depending on how much money you put in there, you can create tax free income for life. And you can see how I get excited about it because I didn't find out till later. I started my annuities in my late 40s
it.
and I didn't know about the IUL. So I have tax deferred income and they've done very well. But the tax free IUL also has catastrophic illness protection, long-term care in it. So 1, it gives you tax-free income. 2, it builds a cash value. So, you're 70 years old and you have a hole in your roof, you can literally borrow money from your cash, fix the roof, pay it back, and all your tax-free income stays the same. Has a death benefit, God forbid if something happens, your wife or your spouse or your beneficiaries get that. And they let you use 2 to 4% of the death benefit if you have a catastrophic illness. Now, what I teach my clients how to do is to stay high level, to stay out of a nursing home, because if you can set this up, you can manage your own care in your home. And you get the rails and the ramps, and the therapists come to the house. You have your own food, and you will live longer than going to a nursing home. It's a fact,
Yeah.
a proven fact. So that's really something that I would really encourage people. The other thing is you need a living trust. You have assets. You're in this world. We're in a crazy world. You need the power of attorney for healthcare. You want to be in charge of your own medical, right? Not have some doctor tell you what you need. And your power of attorney for financial. Look, if you go skiing and break your leg, who's going to pay the bills? And you have your spouse or your family member be that power of attorney. And then you have all of this backup. What if this? What if that? And that's what I go through with people. You know what? It takes a lot of burden off you. It gives you peace of mind, and right now, that peace of mind is more valuable than all the money in the world.
Yeah. I agree. My dad, once one thing he said, get debt free and stay debt free. He said, pay your house off when you can, because he said, when you have no payments, there's just something about the stress that's relieved from that. You can actually create more. There's a lot more that comes to you in the world just because you don't have that burden of, I've got to pay
Right.
this off.
And there's a really neat thing. Number 1, don't live above what you can pay for. Don't get in the credit card monster thing. There's one thing about paying your house off. A lot of people think, then once I pay my house off, then by the time they pay their house off, they're already 50, 60, and 70. So you have to learn how to amortize your house. But you take a certain good percentage right now, especially now, to put away to save in some of these places where you don't lose your principal, where you can get tax-free income. So you've got to be just as intentional as you pay your house off. You want to be just as intentional that you pay your retirement off, the life without work. And you can customize that too with the IUL. You could, depending on how much money you have, you don't have to wait till you're 60, whatever, to retire. You
Wow.
could actually do it younger. And that's why I was mad that I didn't know about that.
Earlier could have changed
Right.
things. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Kris, thank you so much for being on the show. I found it again inspiring that you even share some of those financial instruments that could help people. But folks, if you're looking for someone to go over something with you financially, pull out Kris's phone number, rewind, and give her a call and set something up with her. Kris, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it. And everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of A Shot of Inspiration. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Shot of Inspiration. If you like this or any of our other episodes, make sure you rate it and share it with a friend. This is Greg Stevens, and we look forward to being with you next time. Until then, be bold, be courageous, and respectfully speak your truth.